Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Darkness. Have you ever had something happen that you just can't explain? Or seen something that no one would believe? These experiences can strike fear into the hearts of even the bravest. But don't worry, it'll be over quickly. Most of the time. In the Road. From Anonymous. I was 18 years old when this happened, in my senior year of high school. I started dating a girl who lived an hour away in Bogalusa, Louisiana, and I would frequently drive out to go see her on the weekends. Bogalusa sits along a river and is surrounded by swamps. In my opinion, it's an area notorious for heavy fog and flooding. It also has a rural area, and it wasn't uncommon for someone to hit a deer when traveling to and fro. Being a young driver, my parents would ask that I be home no later than 11 p.m. to avoid this. On this particular day, it rained heavily throughout, and at night it would be a foggy trip back to my home. The first half of the trip was normal. I drove at the posted speeds and occasionally slowed down when I saw eyes in the tree line. This contributed to the eerie air surrounding these drives. I always felt like there was something lurking about and was tempted to gun it out of there. The only way I can describe this feeling accurately is to say that there is an atmosphere of stillness. Lights barely penetrated the fog, the rain had stopped, and the road was abandoned. It was like all life had stopped. Time passed, and halfway through the drive, I had finally reached a small bit of civilization. A Dollar General store left its lights on. A railroad track weaved through the road, and ahead of me a car pulled out of the McDonald's drive-thru. The car went pretty slow, which ticked me off because I had to meet curfew, but I stayed behind it in the hopes that it would pull off soon. Following down the road, the car and myself left the little town. The path ahead was dark, so I kept a good following distance and tracked the car's taillights. I was exhausted, and the car had pushed me past curfew. And the next day, which was a Monday, I was going to have school. Dozing off, I rolled down the windows to get some cool air and kept following the car. Minutes passed. I was getting frustrated. We approached a railroad track that was slightly uphill, and being in a hurry, I pulled close behind the car I followed. Out of nowhere, the car in front of me jerked and skid across the pavement. No more than 8 feet in front of me, an emaciated figure was curled onto the tracks. Pale white, with patchy bald hair, a man rocked back and forth, clawing at his face. I quickly threw the steering wheel to avoid him and swung my car around him. Maneuvering as best as I could, I managed to dodge him and slammed on the brakes once I passed. The car that I was following sped along, out of sight. I was alone in the surrounding fog. My heart was racing. I clicked on my hazards and unbuckled my seatbelt. Jutting myself out of the window, I stared back at what little the flashing lights could illuminate. Silence. Nothing except for the ticking of my blinkers. "Hello?" I gently cried out. "Are you all right? Did I hit you?" In the distance, the man slowly postured himself upright and turned his head towards me. He stood there silently, unmoving, and then he let out the most inhuman scream I had ever heard. Breaking into a full sprint, he ran towards my vehicle. I quickly threw the car into drive and sped off from the scene. Not more than a minute later, I found that the people I had been following earlier had decided to pull around and parked on the shoulder. I approached behind them and yelled out the window, "Did you see that?" "Yeah, I'm going back," the driver responded to me, while he simultaneously called police. We eventually came back to where the man had been, but there was nothing. Just an old railroad. To this day, this is one of the most weird and scary things I have ever had happen to me. Weird things that happened. From Anonymous. From 1st grade to 6th grade, I lived in a house in Minnesota. I'm unsure how old this house was because I never properly asked, but I believe it was quite old. Anyway, some spooky things had happened at that house that I can never forget. These stories might be a bit drawn out and maybe not even spooky, so I apologize again. I'll start with my personal story that I went through. One day, I went into the first floor bathroom to trim my nails. As it was the middle of the day, I could hear regular noises like the living room TV and cars driving by the main road in front of their house. All of a sudden, everything went silent. I stood still, almost paralyzed in fear, because I could feel something behind me. I felt something go up my back, almost like 2 fingers just grazing it, and a little girl's voice say, "I'm in here." All the regular sound came back as I burst out of the bathroom and ran to my parents' room sobbing. My mother was in that room and was so scared and worried, asking what was wrong. I was full of fear since I was a young elementary student, and just told her about how something had touched me in the bathroom and told me it was in there. She believed me and ran into the bathroom and shouted for whatever it was to leave her family alone and leave her daughter alone. I know it didn't do anything malicious to me, but I was so terrified. For some reason, I believe it was in the bathroom closet. Maybe it was my creative young mind, but I always imagined there was a small girl crouched in that closet all the time. The second story takes place yet again in the middle of the day. My father was laying on the couch watching TV. He was facing the TV, but in his line of vision, he has a clear view of where the main hallway connects to the kitchen. He was concentrated on the TV, but saw a young girl with a dress on run from the hallway to the kitchen. He didn't pay any mind because he thought it was me playing around, but he quickly snapped to attention because he remembered I was a very tomboyish girl and didn't own or wear any dresses. My father is very level-headed and not scared of paranormal things, so he ignored this. The third story is about something my older sister went through in that house. She was in high school at the time. We had a family dog named Coco, and she was very well trained. We had trained her never to go downstairs because we kept the cat litter box in the laundry room down there, and we didn't want her getting into it. My sister's room was downstairs, and one evening my parents and I were gone, and she was home alone. She was downstairs in her room when she heard heavy footsteps walking down the hallway upstairs. Immediately after, Coco ran down the stairs and into my sister's room with her. This really frightened my sister because she knew no one was home and didn't know what could have scared Coco enough to get her to go downstairs, where she never went. This next one was kind of weird to me. My mother told me she was sleeping on the couch in the living room one night, and she woke up out of the blue. I had a Wii hooked up to the main TV that had a red light when it was off. She told me that it was changing colors, from green and then to red or yellow. She said she saw a tall black figure in our kitchen. That sounded bad to me, but she said she saw Coco walk right up to it with her tail wagging until she went back to sleep. When I told her that it was still scary, she said she believed it was a guardian angel or something, because she is a religious woman. I haven't heard of angels taking the form of tall black figures, but I didn't worry too much about it because she said she felt calm and wasn't really scared of it. Thinking back on her story, I wonder if she was just seeing things in her sleepy moment. Who knows? My last story is the one that scares me the most for some reason. In the middle of the night, my parents woke up. I have no clue why, but there was a reason my dad had to go downstairs and into our small room that contained our fuse and water system. It wasn't because of a power outage though, as all the lights were off because everyone was asleep. Maybe they heard something. Anyway, my mom said she laid awake after that with her eyes closed, waiting for him to come back, and their bedroom light turned on. She didn't move, but she was confused and assumed he had came back quietly. She didn't hear his loud footsteps stomping back up the stairs, so that's what confused her. However, almost right after that, she heard his heavy footsteps going up the stairs, and the bedroom light turned back off. They talked about it when he got back. I was told the majority of these other stories once I was a bit older, because they knew I got scared easily. Friend or Fiend by Jom Sikoi. It was Christmas that time when my sister shared her experience with my nephew's friend. She recalled one time that she woke up to her son screaming and crying. It happened one afternoon when she fell asleep while letting her son play on his own with his toys at the end of the bed. She said it was the last thing she remembered before she dozed off, before it happened. My nephew, who was 2 to 3 years old at the time, was screaming and crying when my sister came to. She got up quickly and saw her son being lifted a few inches from the bed at the window. She quickly grabbed him, and it was as if someone was also trying to pull him out the other side of the window. And as they were struggling, my nephew was yelling at the friend that he doesn't want to go with him. And my sister instinctively shouted to whoever it was to leave her son alone and not take him. After a few seconds of struggling, finally it stopped. As soon as he was free and was able to latch onto her, she quickly ran off away from the house. She rushed over to our local babalan and told him what happened. They went back to the house, but this time only the babalan went inside while she remained outside. According to her, the babalan dug a hole and planted a talisman in front of the house near the gate where people enter and at the back. That talisman is supposed to ward off evil entities and people with evil intentions. He also gave my nephew a talisman that he can wear as an accessory, and he still wears it to this day. He's now 5. I have a creepy tale to tell, from Anonymous. The following is a true story. This story is an account of a few years of my childhood. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, as it's not an exciting one, but it's quite unsettling. I have lived in the same house for my entire life, in the deep country of North Carolina, on the Virginia border. It's packed full of dense forest, and stories as old as the trees themselves. The house is a small 3-bedroom home made of brick, wood, and fond memories. All but this one. At the time, me and my brother shared a room with a window, facing the backyard, and the forest about 60 yards back. I was around 6 or 7, and my brother was around 9 or 10. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep or didn't want to, I would stare out the window into the woods and up at the stars. I did this a lot. I really loved the calm of the forest at night, until one day I saw something. It had to be around 1 or 2 a.m. There was a figure at the edge of the woods facing my house. A man with a long beard and green jacket was just sitting on a log facing my house. As a kid, I had no idea what to feel about it. I wouldn't say I was scared, more confused. I tried to get my brother awake and to look, but he just wouldn't move. I eventually stopped looking out the window after about 20 minutes and went to sleep. The next day, I looked outside and saw nothing. I thought he might show up again the next night, but he didn't. I asked my brother if he ever saw anything. He said he didn't, so I figured maybe it was my imagination. Unfortunately not. Over the course of a year, I would see the man 1 to 2 times a month. I wasn't always looking for him, so maybe he was there more often. He would never leave the edge of the woods and would rarely move. The only thing that changed about him were his ratty, dirty clothes. During this time, I asked some of the neighbor kids about it. A few of them had said that they saw something similar. For some reason, I wasn't worried about telling my parents. I never thought I was in danger. I was just fascinated with this man. Eventually, I did stop seeing him. Maybe he left or died somewhere deep in the woods. About a year after I stopped seeing this man, my sister, my brother, and I were exploring the woods. About a 20-minute walk away, there is a pond and an old abandoned 2-story house. Like any rational kids, we decided we needed to go look inside of it. The house was decrepit and full of dust. The first room we walked into was a living room. What we saw was newspaper everywhere from 2004, empty food cans and wrappers, a pile of deer bones, and for some damn reason, a flipbook-type blueprint of the local high school. When we look at this, we're immediately unsettled, and my brother and I wanted to book it, but my sister wants to look around more. In the kitchen is an old bike and 2 walls fully covered in dirt dauber nests, a type of hornet species. At this point, we decide to nope out of the whole house and we run away. Thinking back on it now, it's likely that the man was homeless and possibly mentally unwell and squatting in that house. After that, I never saw or hear anything about that man, but I still to this day keep curtains on my windows out of paranoia. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to hear more. If you have any ideas for things you want to see in future videos, feel free to comment down below. If you would like to have your story narrated, send it to storiesofdarkness55@gmail.com. And as always, pleasant dreams.